Every time the Night King leaves a spiral of limbs in his wake, he is not just spreading terror, he is signing his name. These patterns are a distorted mirror of ancient Stark heraldry, and they point to something the show never told you directly. The White Walker's commander was once a Lord of Winterfell. Today we are decoding the bloodline legacy that Game of Thrones buried in plain sight. Let's start from the very beginning. The first scene of the entire show, before Ned Stark, before Daenerys, before any of it, gives you wildling body parts arranged in a deliberate geometric pattern in the snow, with children staked to trees. A ranging party from the Night's Watch stumbles across it and cannot explain it. Most viewers chalked it up to White Walker weirdness, but that opening image is not random. Similar symbols keep showing up, and by the time you understand where they come from, the whole story changes. In Season 3, Jon Snow and the wildlings arrive at the Fist of the First Men to find the mutilated remains of all the Night's Watch horses arranged in a massive seven-armed spiral. Mance Rayder looks at it and says casually, "Always the artists." He says it like it is something he has seen before, something these creatures do regularly. Not random destruction, deliberate arrangement, deliberate geometry. Then, in Season 6, Episode 5, The Door, Bran has a guided vision with the three-eyed raven, going back thousands of years, and he watches the children of the forest capture a White Walker, and if you look at the ground around him in that scene, the stones are arranged in a spiral around the tree, the exact same spiral. Later in the same episode, Bran does something reckless. He enters a second vision entirely alone, without his mentor's guidance, defying every warning he had been given. That is when he finds himself, then grabs his arm. The handprint burned into Bran's forearm in the real world, and it broke the magical protection of the three-eyed raven's cave, allowing the White Walkers to track them and invade. Here is what one of the show's own writers confirmed to the New York Post. Their rituals. When they created the Night King by sacrificing that man in the centre of that stone spiral, the symbol became tied to his very creation. And then the Night King took that same symbol and weaponized it, using it as what the writer called a sort of blasphemy, like Satan with the upside-down cross. He is not drawing random patterns. He's throwing his creator's most sacred symbol back in their faces, in blood and body parts, everywhere he marches. That is not the behaviour of a mindless force of nature. That is the behaviour of someone who remembers, someone who is furious, someone with a history. So who was he? Now here is where things get genuinely unsettling. The show never gives you his name. But the books do something more interesting. They give you a legend, and the legend points directly to House Stark. In A Storm of Swords, young Bran Stark is sitting at the Night Fort, one of the oldest and most feared castles on the Wall, and he recalls a story old Nan used to tell him. She told it often. The story of a man called the Night's King. Note the slight difference in name from the show's Night King. Old Nan's version was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, a warrior so feared he knew no fear, and she said, and this is the exact detail that matters, that was his flaw, because all men must know fear. He fell in love with a woman beyond the Wall, a woman with cold white skin and eyes like blue stars. He brought her to the Night Fort, declared himself a king, and ruled alongside her, sacrificing to the others, the beings we know from the show as White Walkers. He was only brought down when the King of the North and a king beyond the Wall united their armies against him, and after he was defeated, all records of his reign were destroyed. His name was erased from history forever. Old Nan told different versions of the story on different nights. Sometimes she said the Night's King was a Bolton, sometimes a Flint, sometimes an Umber, but she always saved her real answer for last. She would pinch Bran on the nose and say that none of those were true, that the Night's King was a Stark of Winterfell and brother to King Brandon the Breaker, who finally brought him down. And then she would whisper that perhaps his name was Brandon, that he might have slept in the very bedroom Bran was sleeping in. George R.R. Martin himself clarified that the Night's King from the books and the Night King from the show are technically different characters. The show's Night King predates the Night's Watch by thousands of years, but that does not mean the showrunners did not borrow from this legend, because the connection to the Starks in the show is woven into the fabric of what we see on screen, even if they never say it out loud. Here is the first connection most people overlook. The Night King's creation scene in Season 6 takes place among the children of the forest. The man they choose is one of the First Men, and the Starks are not just descendants of the First Men. They are among the oldest and most powerful lines tracing back to those same people. Ned Stark says it himself in Season 1. The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks. The creature they created was not some anonymous wanderer. The children needed a weapon powerful enough to use against the first men. They needed someone strong, someone from a bloodline of leaders. Then there is the Warging connection. This is the thread that people consistently underestimate. In the North, the ability to warg, to put your mind into an animal or another living creature, is a rare gift tied specifically to the bloodlines of the first men. The Stark children all show signs of it. Jon's direwolf ghost moves like an extension of Jon's instincts. Arya is drawn to Nymeria. Rickon's wolf was always running wild, reflecting his own uncontrolled grief, and Bran is the most powerful of all, able to warg into Hodor, a human being, which no ordinary warg should be able to do. Now look at the Night King. He does not just command the dead the way a general commands soldiers. He feels them. He controls every single wight simultaneously across hundreds of miles. When Arya kills him in Season 8, every single wight drops at exactly the same moment. Not because they ran out of orders, but because the connection running through all of them was severed at once. That is not magic. That is warging on a scale that dwarfs anything the living Starks can do. The Night King is the most powerful warg who ever lived. And where does the gift of warging come from? From the oldest bloodlines of the North, from the first men, from the ancestors of the Starks. Now, let's go to Winterfell's crypts, because that is where the architecture of this theory gets strange and cold. The crypts beneath Winterfell are older than the castle itself. According to the lore in Martin's books, Winterfell was built after the first long night, which means the oldest levels of the crypt predate even the castle built above them. Statues are only carved for kings of the North and lords of Winterfell. Not everyone, not most people, only the ones who mattered enough to rule, and the crypt goes deep. The lowest level is described as partly collapsed. We never see what is all the way down there. Here is something that does not get talked about enough. The tradition of placing iron swords across the laps of the statues in the crypt exists for a very specific reason. According to the books, iron swords were placed there to keep vengeful spirits within, not to honour the dead, to contain them. The people who built these crypts were afraid of something already inside them. Old Nan, in the books, says the others, the White Walkers, fear iron, so the deepest levels of the most ancient Stark burial site are warded against the same creatures the Night King commands. Why would the original builders of Winterfell need to ward against the White Walkers from inside the crypt? What was already in there that required that level of containment? And here is the other thing. In the books, as you go deeper into the crypts, the statues get older. Some are so ancient that the faces have worn away entirely. There are kings listed in the lore, Brandon the Burner, Brandon the Shipwright, Theon the Hungry Wolf, whose bodies and remains date back thousands of years. But the lore also mentions that the lowest level is collapsed, partly destroyed, as though something once happened down there that was too catastrophic to leave intact. If there was once a Stark who became the Night King, his statue would not be in the crypt. His name was erased from history, just like the Night's King in Old Nan's story. Now look at the show's relationship between the Night King and the Stark family. This is where it gets personal. The Night King does not target everyone equally. He targets Bran specifically. From Season 6 onward, his singular mission, beyond the wall, beyond raising the dead, beyond everything, is to kill the three-eyed Rave solo vision. He broke the magic protecting the cave, wiped out the children of the forest sheltering there, killed the original three-eyed raven, and killed Hodor. He never said a word. He did not need to. The message was the action itself. He can see Bran. He can reach Bran, and he intends to erase him. Bran himself explains in Season 8 that the Night King has hunted the three-eyed raven before, many times, across many centuries, and in Season 8, his entire march south seems directed at Winterfell not as a military objective, but as a destination. He does not go to King's Landing. He does not go to Casterly Rock. He goes to Winterfell. If his only purpose were to kill all life in Westeros, there are faster ways to do it. King's Landing has 1 million people, but he goes north first. He goes home first, because he is not just conquering, he is returning. And then there is Jon. The stare-downs between Jon and the Night King are some of the most charged moments in the show, and they are never explained. At Hardhome in Season 5, after Jon manages to kill a White Walker with Valyrian steel, The Night every single person who just died in that battle as whites. It is not a combat gesture. It is a demonstration. He's showing Jon something specific. He is saying, this is what I am. And maybe this is what you could become. The show never pays this off. Jon and the Night King never speak. They never fight one-on-one. Arya is the one who kills him, in a move nobody saw coming. And while that ending was designed as a subversion, it left an enormous question unanswered. What was the Night King actually doing? What was the point of all of this beyond kill everything? The answer the evidence points to is this. He was not trying to destroy Winterfell. He was trying to reclaim it. A Stark Lord, thousands of years ago, was taken by the Children of the Forest. They needed the most powerful man they could find. A warg, a leader. Someone whose mind was strong enough to become the weapon they needed. They drove dragonglass into his heart and made him into something ancient and terrible. And whatever was left of the man he used to be, whatever fragment of memory survived the transformation, it never forgot where it came from. He left spirals carved in the sacred patterns of the people who made him, turned inside out into acts of violence. The Night's King of Old Nan's story. His story became a legend that could be told to children at bedtime only because it was supposed to be impossible. And there is something about this family, the Warging, the connection to the old gods, the weirwood trees, the crypts, the direwolves, that runs deeper than just noble blood. Something in this bloodline has always been connected to forces that other houses cannot touch. The Night King is the most terrifying version of what a Stark can become when the man is stripped away, and only the power remains. And here is the detail from the very end of the show that nobody talks about. After the long night, and the battle is over, Bran Stark becomes king, not Jon, the boy who can see everything, the boy who inherited the same ancient ability the Night King had, the Warging, the green sight, the connection to every tree and every crow and every living creature in the world. The boy with no desire, no ambition, no emotion left that we can recognize. Maybe the show did pay it off. Maybe the point was always that the line between the Night King and Bran Stark was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. One became the three-eyed raven. One became something else. Both had the same gift. Both ended up ruling, one in ice, one on a throne that was never supposed to be his. The Starks have always said, there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. For 8,000 years, one was always there. He just stopped being recognizable as one. If this hit different than you expected, drop a comment below telling me which piece of evidence locked it in for you. The spiral, the crypts, the warging, or the stare down at Hardhome. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now because there are more theories where this came from, and some of them are going to rearrange how you see this entire show. Stay right here.